Good morning, Darren. Last Saturday, Leslie McCormick of your Farwell group continued our conversation about how to shock-proof your retirement income and started to explain steps so we could learn how to get a reliable income for our retirement in spite of what happens in the markets. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, Marilyn, I'm actually going to go along a little bit different tack today based on a meeting I had with a client recently. There's an old saying, we've talked about it many times before from a woman's perspective with our listeners. The sage-old advice is, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. Now, that's absolutely true. But having said that, it's also important to control what you can in terms of what happens to you. There are lots of things you can control, and not falling victim to a romance scam is definitely something that you can control. Now, me and Leslie and my team, the Farwell Group, we work with people going through significant life transitions. That's why we have special training as certified financial transition specialists. And that's why we're uniquely positioned to help widows. It's from our work with widows that we see how difficult that transition can be at the best of times. Now, on top of that, in today's environment, we're adding additional isolation and loneliness to the mix. These are big obstacles to overcome, and it can leave widows vulnerable to romance scams, especially these days with more self-isolating and social distancing. Many people are spending more time on the internet, with email, on Facebook. That's exactly where many of the romance scams begin. By aiming for the heart, romance scammers are highly profitable. And while only 5 to 15% of victims actually report it, very often because they feel a little shy and ashamed about what happened, according to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, it still cost Canadians about $26.7 million in fraud last year, and they suspect that was way underreported. So one thing right now that I'd like to say, if you feel you've been victim of something like that, please report it to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. Now, the conversation I was talking about when I started our show today was with my client, Barb. She's been a widow for many years, and she told me a story about her friend Debbie, who sent $6,000 to an email fraudster before she saw the light, shut him down, and reported it. Now, Debbie met him online in March, just this March past. They met by email. There was video calls, and a lot of flattery came fast, frequent, and furious from their very first email connection. He shared stories about his home, his children, his success, his dreams, his job, and he had video and pictures to back all these stories up. He was going to come up from the U.S. to Canada as soon as the border opened up. Then, for some weird set of circumstances, he needed a quick loan of $500. Now, according to my client, Debbie has lots of money. She could easily afford the $500. But before he could pay that $500 back, he needed another $2,000. His banking was apparently all messed up. He was traveling a lot. His wallet was stolen, and his daughter needed some treatments really quickly. Well, according to my client, Debbie began to feel, like this maybe wasn't right, but she sort of didn't want it to be a scam, so she continued. But another $2,000 request later, and enough was enough. Under scrutiny, it all turned out to be a fraud. Now, fortunately, in the circumstance for Debbie, she was able to absorb the financial loss with really just a giant bruise to her self-esteem. The thing is, Debbie is by no means alone. The con artists are good at finding your soft points and tapping into the emotional need that make you vulnerable in the first place. So we can't control everything, but do control what you can. If you're having an email romance, talk about it with your friends. If someone asks you for money and your spidey senses start to tingle, talk to somebody. Talk to a friend. Talk to a family member. Talk to a counselor or even your financial advisor. Because financial security involves protecting yourself and your savings from con artists and fraudsters. Now, from a woman's perspective, listeners would like our 7 tips for avoiding romance scams, please feel free to call or email, and we'll send that to you. But before I go today, I want to highlight 3 of what my professional opinions are the big ones. Number 1, if you're having an email romance or kind of virtual romance, go slow. Number 2, do the research. Take it as a research project. If someone starts connecting with you online, do follow up. Find out if the things they're sending are all legit. And then finally, talk to others. There's no shame in talking to others about what's going on, so make sure others are aware. They may see something that's not obvious to you.
Wow, you made my jaw drop. So romance scams are alive and well, and millions are being lost. But I think your advice is great, and I would love to get the sheet with the 7 tips. So I'm going to call you at 416-863-7501 and make my personal request. And anyone listening who is interested in having those 7 tips to avoid a romance scam, all you have to do is call Darren and the Farwell Group and ask your questions, request the form, or ask any financial questions, and you'll get solid answers. That's 416-863-7501. Darren, thank you for that great advice and that good, happy story, because at least Debbie is out of the mess now. And I look forward to learning more from you next week.
Thank you, Marilyn. It's good speaking with you, as always.
Thank you.